Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy here. This is the Ontario Knife Carta Prime. So Ontario is actually the same people who brought us the Ontario Rat number 2 and Rat number 1, both of which are pretty solid gems in the value market. This guy actually won the Thrifty Thursday competition for the very best budget knife. So Ontario's got some knife-making chops. Speaking of knife-making chops, the designer of this guy is a guy named Robert Carter, who I didn't really know from Adam. I did a little research. Turns out this guy is Mel Pardew's grandson. That's right, Mel Pardew, who's done a lot of designs for Benchmade, really well-known knife maker. Got the genetics going on there too. So that's kind of neat, right? But anyways, Ontario Carta Prime. And I do want to thank my buddy Francisco for sending this guy along. This has actually been very requested by viewers, and I actually had a couple of offers on the table to send this guy along. It just worked out with Francisco. Size comparison. Here is a Spyderco Delica. Here is the, well, might as well, Ontario Rat number 2 and the Rat number 1. There we go. So you can see this is not a huge knife, but it is of some size relative to, say, your Rat 2. Here is your ZT 452 CF. There we go. And what the heck, the Greensmo Norseman. Beautiful. Alrighty. So there we go. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always. Okay. So on the good side, first and absolutely foremost is the action here. The action on this knife is shockingly good. This is an $83, $85 knife, depending where you get it. And it's really, really, really good as an action. What I mean by that is it's a frame lock flipper. And when you pull back on the flipper tab here, it fires, and absolutely authoritatively, absolutely effortlessly. Well, no, you have to put some effort in, but there's no question you don't need any kind of wrist whatsoever. You can do it from a complete pause, and there's no problem. You can do it with your finger resting on the lock bar. You can do it without your finger resting on the lock bar. You can do it any damn way you please here, and it works like a charm. And that's a beautiful thing. The detent is very hard to get dialed in. Some production companies, like ZT, have managed to pull it off. But by and large, there's a lot of waffling back and forth. And at least on this particular guy, and I'm not the first person to talk about the action on this knife, this is really well done. More interestingly, though, is the closing action is very good, too. It's not, for instance, quite as fall shut smooth as your Greensmo Norseman, but again, this is a much more expensive custom knife. Or even your Shirogorov Neon, which again has that quality that you're just not able to keep the blade open once it's unlocked. Or even your Graham Razel here. But that said, the smoothness on this guy is along the lines of the very best in production knives. It is right up next to the ZT 452 CF here, which is also a very smooth knife. So between the two of these, I go back and forth on which has the better action. And considering that this is $100, I'm sorry, this is $100, that's $200, that's actually really impressive. So, I mean, just the action on this guy is so incredible, and that blows me away. So that's the first good part, and it's one of the very, very goodest parts of this knife, and oh boy, okay, moving on. The price is good. You're looking at about $100, 83 in some places. I don't know if that's just temporary, but either way, you're seeing it in that low price bracket, and that's good, especially for an action like this. The construction on the knife is very strong in that this is just titanium. You got titanium over here, you got titanium back here on the back spacer. You got 3 back spacer screws along with the pivot. I mean, this knife is well put together. I don't feel like it's going to be broken down by anything particularly. It's very, very nicely done. So that's good. The blade shape I like in that I love a Wharncliffe blade. One of my favorites is this guy here, the Graham Razel, and it has another one of those long straight edges. In fact, the straight edge on this guy is just about as long as on the Razel, although in a much smaller package overall. But anyways, I do love a Wharncliffe blade for everyday carry personally, because it is useful in a variety of situations. It's got some downsides, but by and large, I'm never going to argue with a good Wharncliffe. So, there you go. The blade steel on this guy is D2 steel, which is good to go. Very solid steel. Its only possible issue is that it's a little rust prone, but the DLC coating on here is actually kind of helpful there. Helps to knock down the rust issue with D2. And again, long-time viewers, I just called a blackwash coating a good thing. I must be getting sick or something. I don't know what's going on here. But either way, I like it, and it's not just a DLC. It's also stonewashed. So hopefully you can see that there's a little bit of texture to the stonewash, to the DLC as well. It's nice. Got yourself a milled clip going on here, which is pleasant, and is kind of unusual in knives at this kind of production price point, and so it's built for the knife specifically. And it's also worth pointing out that the clip serves as an over-travel stop for the lock bar. It helps to support the lock bar a little bit, which is nice. I'm a big fan of that. So that's another good thing, and the clip works fine. No particular problems with the clip. Carries beautifully. So that's good. The back spacer, as I mentioned, is titanium, and the fit and finish here is not perfect, but it is pretty good. And so I like that, and it makes this very durable, and it helps to stabilize the knife, and that's part of probably the way that they were able to get away with such a good action. Everything is very stiff, so if they get the tolerances right once, they're going to be okay. So that's good. The lock bar cut is nice, specifically the fact that you've got the lock bar. You've got this little hole here for your thumb to slide into to pop it open there. That's a beautiful thing. Another thing to point out is that the lock bar the cut here that's used to reduce the material in order to add flex is on the inside. And that just makes the knife a lot cleaner from the outside. That's not often the case. Usually you've got something like this where it's external for mill and help, but this time they've done it internally. There are relatively few knives that have done it that way. But they are most certainly out there. The Shirogorov Neon's another example of an internal lock bar cut. Is it a big deal? No. Is it a nicety? Yes it is. So there you go. The lockup on this guy is very solid. There's absolutely no question about the lockup here. Very, very nice. Big fan of that. The action is very good. Did I mention the action on this knife? Because I feel like I would be remiss to not mention the action here. And then finally, the action on this knife is really, really good. I feel like I need to make sure I mention that. So there's your good. The action on the knife is good. The price is pretty damn good for what you're getting here. Titanium and D2 steel. The construction on it's strong. The blade shape's great. The blade steel is great. The blackwash helps to resist the rust that is D2's biggest weakness. It's got a nice milled clip, a nice titanium backspacer here. The lock bar cut and the lock bar groove for the thumb is nicely done. The lockup is solid. It's got a really good action, and it's got a really good action. Let's move on. So on the bad side, first a couple of nitpicks. I'm well known for font criticism in my reviews, and right here we have Helvetica, 12-point font. This is fine, you know, it's a perfectly legible font, but it seems really out of place on the blade of a knife as big as it is here. I honestly don't get it. And so, okay, whatever. Speaking of other completely non-functional issues, the appearance of this knife is, well, it's not the belle of any particular ball. It's fine, but it doesn't talk to me. It's got some weird look like an industrial alligator that's very angry. Maybe it's something that'd grow on me, but I'm just not in love with the looks of the knife, particularly. More functionally speaking, there are some issues there, too. For instance, this is a very heavy knife. You're looking at 5.1 ounces, and that's a lot of weight. That is actually more than your Ontario Rat number 1, which is itself a very heavy knife. It is way more than your Grimsmo Norseman, which comes in at 5.0, way more than your Spyderco Delica, which comes in at 2.2. I mean, the only knife I've got in my permanent collection that's heavier than this guy is the Graham Razel here, and that's coming in at 6.4. And, you know, I only love this guy because it's absolutely ridiculous, and I enjoy that fact. But anyways, it's a heavy knife, so you got to keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that the bearings inside the pivot are loose. It's not branded IKBS, but it's a very similar system if it isn't. They're just loose bearings. Watch the disassembly video. I mean, it's very doable. You can take the guy down, but you just need to make sure that you're doing it in a convenient place. You don't do this in the back of your truck. So, there you go. The titanium on this guy does feel thicker than it's needed, especially given the weight. I feel like they probably could have thinned this down, or at the very least, they could have thinned down the blade and thus the backspacer to reduce a little bit of weight here. It's a very thick knife, and the blade particularly is way over thick. at least in my personal opinion here. We've got a thickness about that of the Graham Razel here. And combined with this grind, which is a saber grind sort of thing, it makes this not a very good slicer. And it's not just because I got a Warney blade, because Warneys can sometimes be questionable slicers in some situations. But this is just not a great slicer because of this nice, although it's got a nice hollow grind to it, it's just not stellar for what you need here. So the blade is way over thick. And then finally, I gotta point out, the factory grind on this guy is just not great. I mean, I'm hoping you can see this, but the grind from the factory actually has itself a pretty reasonable little recurve in here. It's just not good, and especially down here, I mean, it's uneven, it's asymmetrical. The factory grind is not great. I mean, on an $85 knife, okay, I guess, but I'm just not in love there. So that's your bad. Helvetica, really? The appearance is a little iffy. It's a very heavy knife. It's got loose bearings. The titanium, and particularly the blade, feels way thicker than it needs to be. As such, it's not a great slicer, and the factory grind really didn't do the trick. Let's go on to your ugly. Okay, in terms of ugly, two things. First off, the writing on the blade is just bad. There's a lot, it's huge, basically. I mean, Carter Prime, okay, yes, I know what the knife is. Thank you very much, I purchased it. And then on the other side, Ontario Knife Company, Taiwan. Okay, maybe for regulatory reasons you need to put where, this was manufactured. That's well and good and great, but come on now. Does it need to be this freaking big? Seriously, they could have written this whole thing. They could have done Carter Prime in little tiny letters around the side here. OKC Taiwan over here, or just even Taiwan. Or put it on the flipper tab, something. You don't need to have that much of your blade filled with crap that's written there. I don't see it. I don't like it. And so, as a result, I'm not a big fan of that. Other big issue in the ugly side is the ergonomics. As a reviewer, I will often talk about hot spots for a knife. Meaning that when I am gripping a knife, there are usually, on most knives, some areas that are just a little less than ideal. A really good ergonomically designed knife might only have one or two little hot spots here. Usually it has something to do with the clip on the knife, or otherwise. But a hot spot is just an area that feels less comfortable. It's an area where something's digging into your hand. This guy, I feel like the better approach would be to talk about cold spots. Because I'm okay with these fingers up here where they're resting on the side of the blade, but everything else is kind of a wreck, I'll be honest with you. What I mean by that is if you're holding it in this grip, the jimping over here is a little too sharp, so my thumb isn't entirely happy. The flipper tab is right up against my index finger here and kind of digging in a little bit when I bear down, and that's no good. On this side here, we've got this little guy, which is a kind of cut off. This jimping doesn't need to be here, in my opinion at least. And then this guy is cut off, so it's even sharper than the rest of them. And so that's uncomfortable. Plus, you've got the clip on the other side here, which is very square and protrudes a fair amount above the knife. I mean, ergonomically speaking, oh man, this is a wreck. I feel like Sal Glesser just woke up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night when the design on this guy was finalized. Just as a reigning, champion of ergonomics. He didn't know what, but there was a great disturbance in the ergonomic force, and, yeah. Anyways, so I'm not a big fan of the ergonomics. I mean, this is kind of a brick, basically. The other big ergonomic issue are these back corners here. Because when you're deploying the knife, a big part of what you're doing is using pressure from your index finger to push it back against the heel of your hand here. That's why I got this little wear mark from flipping knives. The issue with this is that it's got these nice sharp back corners that just dig into the hand when you do that. So you can flip this guy, but it's not so comfortable because the back corner of the knife is digging right in. They rounded this off a little bit more. It would have been a much better situation ergonomically. But as it is, it's just bad. And so ergonomically, this is just a train wreck. I'll be completely honest with you. It's a brick with a flipper. And that's not great. So those are your ugly things. The fact that they wrote a whole bunch of stuff on the blade that they didn't need to in a huge way. And then the fact that it's just an ergonomic wreck. So there you go. What are the final conclusions on this very weird knife? I mean, the final conclusion is basically that this is a very weird knife, because I really have no idea what to think about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's absolutely just a brick with an edge. The ergonomics are terrible. It's got huge, ugly writing all over an over-thick DLC'd blade. Not much of a slicer, and let's face it, it's not much of a looker either. So at that level, it's like, no, go away. But the thing is, then I handle it. And I use it, and the damned action is just so damn good. In many ways, this is it's right in line with the ZT-452, which is one of the best production actions, and it's an outlier. And I find myself wondering whether in some ways this guy, the Carter Prime, has a slightly better action than the ZT here. The detent on this guy is more authoritative than on the ZT. I mean, there is a lot of really, really good stuff in this knife. And so, it's just beautifully done in terms of action and detent and lock bar and all of that stuff. But then there's the rest of it. And so I almost feel like this knife is the result of somebody making a bet. Like the CEO of Ontario Knife bet some other, I bet we can make a knife that can out-action anything on the market for $80. And, they laughed. They were both good and drunk. And then he realized, oh, crap, now I need to win this bet. And so it resulted in some crazy decisions, like the ergonomics here, like the overly thick blade, which results in an easier time falling shut. But they did get the job done. I mean, practically speaking, this is a really, really good point of comparison for a really good action knife. And so I just don't know. I don't know if this is a knife I recommend. It is kind of a one-trick pony, in my opinion. The thing that makes this knife interesting is the incredible action. If it had a bad action, I would be, tossing this guy in the junk heap. But it's just so damn good. It's a one-trick pony, but that's one hell of a trick. And so if you really want stellar action for an inexpensive price, this is a really good choice. And again, Ontario delivers on the value. This company kind of keeps impressing me. But the thing is, if you're just after an EDC knife, after something that you throw in your pocket and you carry and you enjoy, I'm not 100% sure on this guy, because it's not a great slicer. The ergonomics are a train wreck, and, $80 ain't bad, but, that's a Delica plus some change. Or even, frankly, the Ontario Rat number 1 is a really good choice, and this is $40. You lose that incredible flipper action, but you gain better ergonomics, and you get just better overall functionality as a knife. So I just don't know. If you're interested in knife collection and you want to figure out what it is that Nick Shabazz is talking about when he talks about a great action, then sure, pick one of these guys up. Holy crap. But otherwise, I just don't know. So it's not a gem, but it's sure as heck not junk, but it's really close to being junk, except that it's not at all close to being. I'm just confused. So there you go. This is a knife that confuses me greatly, and I maybe recommend it. I hope that's been helpful to you in some remote way, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.